Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. My name is Jacqueline O'Monier. I'm one of the Education and Training Officers with Under One Roof. I'm here with my colleague Rebecca today. We are delighted to be hosting this webinar with our partners at Glasgow City Council, chatting to you all about damp and mould today. We're very pleased that we've got Joe from Mill Architects here to help us with the presentation today. And let me just kind of take you through a wee bit of housekeeping on how we're getting started today. So we're going to be here for roughly about an hour. We're recording today's session and you'll get a copy of the recording and the slide deck sent out to you within about 24 to 48 hours of the session today. So please don't worry too much about furiously taking down notes. You will get everything sent out to you so you can go back and look at things in your own time. Rebecca will be in the background during the presentations, and she'll be posting links to web pages and other kind of resources on the chat function. So if you, depending on what device you're using, you'll either have the buttons across the top or to your right hand side. So the chat function will just be where all the page links and references will be put in. You can comment in the chat if you would like to as we go through the presentation. But if you can use the Q&A box for any questions that you have, we would really appreciate that. So once Joe and I have completed our presentations, we'll come back into the main area, and we'll be joined by Julie and Brian from Glasgow City Council, and we'll go through the Q&A. We'll hopefully get through all of the questions, but we'll come back to you separately offline if there's anything that we can't get to specifically, or if we need to kind of have an off-screen conversation about something. I think that's all of the housekeeping. There's no fire alarms or anything like that planned for where we are today. So hopefully we can just get into things and give you as much useful information as possible about damp and mould. So that being said, let me hand over to Joe, and Joe will take us through her presentation, and then it'll be my turn, and then we'll go to the Q&A. So Joe, the floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
I've just shared my screen. Great. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming this lunchtime. My name is Jo Parry-Geddes. I am a director at Mill Architects, which is an architectural company based in South Queensferry. I'm a conservation architect, and for the last 25 years, 25 years, can't believe it. I've worked on traditional buildings, focusing on assisting flat and property owners and landlords to carry out tenement repairs in common communal properties. So many challenges. Now, let me just see. So the purpose of our event today, as I'm sure you know, is Jacqueline is going to talk about the legalities of the under one roof situation with tenement laws and the new AWAB's law that is coming into play. Firstly, I'll be discussing general maintenance issues and tenement construction. I'll be highlighting common problems encountered with them, including damp and mould, which seems to be what happens with any kind of ingress or problems within tenements. I'll provide an awareness on the importance of property maintenance and how to prevent problems. And lastly, I'll just have a quick chat about the parliamentary issues that are currently going on in the background that could affect things in the future. So generally, types of tenements. There's lots of different types of tenements. People sometimes just assume that you're in a tenement property if you're in a pre-war, a traditional sandstone property in the centre of a city. But a tenement, as Under Wooden Roof would tell you, is classed as any building divided into two or more parts horizontally. So that could include just a house. If you were divided in two, then you are classed as a tenement, and then the tenement law comes into play. So back in the day, Scotland's Romano-Dutch law made it possible to purchase airspace with rights of support and shelter from flats above and below. So this is why we built so high in the cities, because we didn't have the floor space, but we had the airspace. We had a plentiful amount of stone as well back in the day when all the quarries were still open. And so we used it, and we have now we now have the history and significance of the properties that we have throughout the cities in Scotland today. Owners are jointly responsible with their co-owners to maintain the common parts of the tenement, which are those that provide support and shelter. That's the legality terms. The different styles of tenements that we have mostly built before World War One, which is our stone tenements and villas. You have other social housing, which was built between 1920 and 1940, which tends to be brick and render. 60s to 80s, you have your low-rise and your high-rise flats, and then you have your modern estates, which were built in the last 40 years. So it's important to realise that, you may very well think you're not in a tenement, but you actually are in a tenement, which can, of course, affect your legalities of what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. Why is it so important to maintain and look after your building? Well, we know that traditional properties throughout Scotland are in a poor and failing condition and have been for a long time. In many cases, the owner has no idea of the condition of the building, because people don't go up onto their roofs and have a look at their chimneys. And, it's a difficult thing to do. So why would you? And it's only until there's water ingress or there's a stone fall occurs that they're forced to take action, because then they know that truly something is wrong. A large proportion of our buildings throughout Scotland are in poor repair due to general maintenance and neglect, not even intention maintenance neglect, but not able to do repairs because they find it so difficult to get together with their owners and get a project off the ground and, of course, finance it. But as we all know, the awareness of the condition of the property and regular maintenance does in turn reduce huge unexpected bills, both external fabric and internally in the properties when problems do arise. So maintaining your property, what's the incentive to get together with your neighbours to maintain your property? To prevent water ingress, which causes internal deterioration, rot and damp throughout the property, and stone falls, and general property deterioration. So health and safety and water ingress. To prevent escalating repair costs, which is the biggest problem that I come across. Regular maintenance, which generally isn't done, will reduce large unexpected bills at a later date, especially if your works are enforced by the council. Then you really kind of lose a certain amount of control over what you can do. And of course, one of the incentives is to maintain and increase the property's value. There's minimal risk to a new buyer, and also, more importantly to landlords, to enable you to continue to let your property out if you're a landlord. If your property is in a poor condition, then you cannot. Back to basics quickly. A typical tenement construction is basically just one thick wall. On the outside of the wall, you have about 150 of sandstone, 150 mil of sandstone. Then you have a bunch of rubbish in the middle, rubble, stone, lots of newspaper, old articles normally stuffed in there. And then on the inside, you generally have lath and plaster on the inside. I feel that people aren't really aware of how much timber there is in a tenement building. There's more timber than you think. You have timber in your floor joists, you have timber in your roof rafters, in your sarking, in your timber safe lintels, in the lath for your lath and plaster. And why is this important? It's important because when water seeps into a tenement and it is attracted to timber, then that's when you get your dry rot, your wet rot. You start to see mould on the inside of your walls. There's a typical tenement diagram here where all the pink dots basically show common problems. So there's quite a lot of common problems that can occur. And it is important to try and work out what is causing the problems that you might have. So some typical fabric defects. I've tried to make this just really, really simple, really, the photos and diagrams demonstrating how easily defects can affect the condition of your flat. These are all properties that I've worked on. Of course, the first one is water leaking inside the building due to choked and blocked gutters. As you can see, the water is then leaking into the timber safe lintel, through the wall onto the lath and plaster, which in turn ended up in the ceiling collapsing inside the property and horrendous damage, as you can see. The photo below is a choked down pipe that has not been maintained. The water therefore is not able to flow down the downpipe, and the stone is saturated, and the water is seeping in through the wall, which in turn is resulting in the damage that you can see on that slide. So not pretty. Looks a lot worse than it is, I have to say. Here's another real life example of a property I worked on in the city. And just amazes me at how small a problem can be. So you can see where the blue arrow here, this is a flat felt roof at the back of a tenement, and the felt had just split. It was beyond its lifespan. It should have been renewed. Because of the split in the felt roof, water had repeatedly got into the flat. We were appointed to do the fabric repairs externally to the tenement block, but obviously we had to look at all the water ingress issues inside. It turns out that it had been saturated for a long time. The ceiling had collapsed. When we took all the window paneling and timbers out, we found a severe outbreak of dry rot. It was very, very stenchy, horrendous. Of course, the people who lived in that property had to be relocated. I think it cost in the tune of about £30,000 to sort out the entire flat internally, notwithstanding the external fabric. So it is so important to catch these things in time. Consequences if you do not maintain your property. Cement. I don't know how much everyone knows about cement, but cement is very bad for stone. It doesn't let it breathe. And with lots of cases and projects that I come across, because the cement almost traps water into the wall, it comes out on the inside of the wall, resulting in mould, resulting in peeling and effervescence that you can see here in the photos that I've got down here that I've taken when I have found problems with this hard cement. The best way to resolve that problem is to rake the cement out if it is loose and defective, and to repoint it with a lime-based mortar, allowing the building to breathe. It's easier said than done, though. A lot of cement repairs were carried out well-intentioned in the 80s, and now we're seeing the detrimental factors that it's doing to our buildings. And it can be quite a big job to repoint elevations, etc. But even if you focus around the area that you were having a problem, it would be better than doing nothing. So that is one of the probably the most common problems that I find to walls of tenement properties. And you can see there that really just because of the hard cement, your water's trapped, it's got nowhere to go, and it ends up going inside the building because that's the easiest route for it to escape. So damp and mould are most what we're talking about today. The most common problems, as can be seen from the previous slides that I've shown you, there are 4 principal sources of moisture that are likely to affect a building. You've got penetration from above, which is rain and defective fabric. You can see here pictures of, and this has been after storm damage as well, lead that has fallen away, slipped slates, exposed sarking. All this in time, if not dealt with, can lead to the problems that you can see in these photos showing just severe water ingress from above. And in turn, if not dealt with, and especially in the conditions of the property, you do start to get this mould, this effervescence on your walls, bubbling maybe of your wall finishes that you don't quite understand why. Then we've got the penetration through, which is what I was talking about there with the cement, where the pointing, so you could have it because of your cement pointing, or you could have it because of a block down pipe where your stone is getting saturated and then the water is escaping into the building. And if that occurs over a period of time, again, you can get this damp and this mold forming. You also have from below, which is your rising damp, mainly to do with external ground levels, distribution of water, maybe failed damp-proof courses from the past, although traditional buildings don't tend to have DPCs. but newer ones obviously do. So that as well is something to get on top of. Otherwise, you will end up with a damp and mold problem. And the fourth cause can be the users of the building, how we use our buildings, the internal moisture vapor. Building occupants can generate a considerable amount of moisture through breathing, making their tea, boiling their tatties, having showers. If you have a couple of showers a day in an unventilated bathroom, then you will get mold and damp. So what to do about that is put in an extractor fan, open your windows, put the heating on. So there's lots of different reasons that you could be getting damp or mold, and it is really important to try and identify the source and the cause of it. 9 times out of 10, it is probably a communal problem that has to get sorted out within the tenement block, and not just down to that one person, but important to seek the appropriate advice and try and find out exactly what is going on. And so this is what Jacqueline is going to be talking to you about in a wee bit more legal info than I have. But generally, we have a WABS law. We're not exactly sure when it is coming into play. We think it'll be March or April this year. Where the Scottish Government is extending the principles of a WABS law into the private rented sector, which means that landlords will have a legal duty to investigate, resolve, and fix the problems within very strict timescales, which is why it's so important to try and understand the source of the problem, who to go to find the source of the problem, and try and get this resolved as quickly as possible. What is mould? Mould is all around us. It needs a food source and moisture to grow. It's a type of fungus that grows on surfaces in damp and humid conditions. Too much moisturiser, not enough ventilation and heating, along with possibly defective fabric issues, can, of course, cause mould. A WAB, so really sad story, was a 2-year-old boy who died in 2020 from a severe respiratory illness caused by prolonged exposure to mould in his social housing flat. This is why a WABS law has been created in his memory, to protect social housing tenants from legally requiring landlords to investigate and fix serious and safety hazards like damp and mould within strict timescales. But I think you'll all agree it makes good sense in general to deal with any defects, whether it's mould, damp, water ingress, health and safety concerns with fabric falling from your building, that it is dealt with as quickly as you can in the best way possible. Other changes to the laws that could be coming in the next few years. I'm on the, along with Under One Roof, we're on the working parliamentary group for tenement law, and we're trying to change a couple of motions to make things easier for owners to repair their buildings and to collectively get together as a group. Tenements are very difficult to manage if you don't have factors, if you don't understand who's in your building. You have landlords, you have Airbnbs. There's lots of, not everyone lives in their flat to be able to get everyone together. So we have asked that building inspections are carried out every 5 years to tenement properties. We have asked that owners' associations are established in a compulsory manner. This is what the Scottish Law Commission have spent the last 2 years assessing the legalities and possibilities behind this, and they have just issued their final paper, which basically advises that it is legally possible to establish mandatory compulsory owners associations, and it provides further insights on how this can be achieved. So watch this space, because this is the key part of this, which has just been completed and issued, and more of this will follow. The third thing that is done in Europe, well, basically everywhere else in the world apart from Scotland, is that owners associations have reserve funds whereby they might put in 50 or £100 a month, which helps with the maintenance of your tenement, checking slip slates, sorting out choked downpipes like I've shown you there before, and just general stuff, so that there's always a pot, and that might get built up over a period of time if you know that you've got large repairs to carry out. So how do we ensure minimal problems with everything that I'm talking to you about here, or fix the problems that you have? It's a 4-step process. 1, always make the building safe. So whether that's if you've got stone falls, slates coming down, anything like that, you can get a cherry picker, you can get rope access contractors just to make the building safe, to make sure nothing's going to fall. Carry out an inspection, a building inspection report. Can be carried out by generally you want a conservation architect or a conservation accredited building surveyor who understands the construction of traditional buildings and understands the pink dots, I suppose, that I showed you before. From that report, you would then arrange, your professional would then help you arrange for required repairs. And that could be going out to tender to get quotes from contractors. It could be your professional preparing drawings and a description of works for people to price, or it might be much smaller scale, and it might just be that it can be managed within yourselves if it turns out that the fabric is indeed okay. Once you have done whatever scale of project you're doing, then regular maintenance is an absolute key. I know that when you get funding from Glasgow City City Heritage Trust, I've done quite a few projects with them. They do insist that you do a maintenance plan at the end of the project so that you carry out maintenance so that all the good work has not gone to waste. So building inspection reports, really important. Understanding your building, really important. The first sign of any defects, of any water ingress, of any black spots, of anything like that, find someone who can help you determine the cause and then fix it. And there are lots of people out there to help, which is, of course, what Under One Roof is here to do. If you have any queries at all, I can help, of course. That's my email there. This will get sent out to you all. And now over to Jacqueline. That's me.
Thanks so much, Jo. Really appreciate that. That was
I
a great.
felt I was speaking very, very quickly. I hope everyone got it. So there was a lot to get through.
Absolutely, yeah, I know. And that's the beauty of our session being recorded today and people getting the slide deck. They'll have lots of time to go through that at their own pace. But hopefully people have found that useful. The chat has been popping off as the young team say. The Q&A is there. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot to get through. I am gonna just gonna double check that I can share my screen with everybody. You let me just go into slideshow mode. I'm gonna whiz through a couple of slides that Jo has already covered off today, and I'm going to start off by talking to you all about the Housing Scotland Act 2025. A lot of you may be aware that we have a new iteration of the Housing Scotland Act. Some of you might not even know that this has happened. It's been under consultation and review with the government for a while, but the bill gained royal assent in November 2025, and the government are now just kind of working through the process of how they are implementing the act into how we're all going to be working from here on in. I know that many landlords are going to be thinking, crikey, this is just another layer of complication and regulation legislation that we've got. And I really honestly do feel your pain. My previous life prior to Under One Roof, I was a letting agent for many years, and I had I don't know if it's necessarily the benefit, but I have worked in the sector for so long that I remember when it was completely unregulated, bar HMO regulations, and slowly, saw all the regulations start to come in the mid 2000s, and it's just, it's built up considerably, and I really do understand that it is a tough environment for landlords to operate in, and it's just it just can. It's just a lot to navigate, a lot to get your head round, and we're here to help you with that. So we're talking today about damp and mould, and what did it say in the Housing Scotland Act 2025 about damp and mould? Well, we've got one paragraph which refers us to the tolerable standard, and just said that any such guidance issued by the Scottish ministers may further specify the circumstances in which a house is to be considered to be substantially free from rising or penetrating penetrating damp under subsection 1B. So if we have a look at the tolerable standard and just remind ourselves of that, the tolerable standard is the basic standard that a property has to meet in Scotland to be considered to be fit for human habitation. And this is where damp and mould kind of sits within. You'll obviously be aware that the tolerable standard sits within the overall repairing standard legislation. So we need to comply with that as landlords. It's not optional. It is a legal requirement. So in the tolerable standard, we have got our properties have got to have structural stability. They've got to be free from rising or penetrating damp. They've got to have natural lighting, ventilation and heating, satisfactory thermal insulation, adequate hot and cold sink facilities, adequate supply of wholesome water, sanitary conveniences within the house, satisfactory facilities for the preparation and cooking of food, effective systems for drainage and disposal of wastewater, adequate access to all external doors and outbuildings, and an adequate and safe electrical installation. So have a think about how you're able to meet compliance with all these, with these 11 points that make up the tolerable standard, whether you've just got one property that you rent out or you've got a portfolio of properties, you've got a legal obligation to comply with this. And this aspect of the tolerable standard of freedom from rising or penetrating damp is where we're going to have AWAB's law sitting most likely. So the Scottish Government is extending the principles of AWAB's law into the private rented sector from March this year. It's not long away at all. We still don't have any details from the government, but the aim is that they want to implement this from March, not just in the social housing sector, but also in the private rented sector. So why are they doing that? Well, it's part of the overall wider effort to raise standards in Scotland's housing sector and with our housing stock. And what will that mean for you as a landlord? It'll mean that you've got a legal obligation to investigate and resolve complaints about damp and mould that you receive either from your tenant or via your letting agent. And you're going to have strict timeframes to comply with in the repairs process. You can have a look at how AWAB's law has been situated in England. Hopefully Rebecca can get a link to that and post it into the chat. And it's categorised into whether things are an emergency, whether they're urgent, or it's an ongoing repair, and it states the timescales that you have to meet. Crucially, we don't know how the Scottish Government is going to interpret that and for Scotland, but we have to work, I guess, on the basis of right now of thinking it's going to be similar. Therefore, we want to start to kind of build our knowledge of that and figure out how we're going to be able to comply with that and what we can do now to try and help ourselves. So what can you do now? One of the first things that you can do as a landlord or speak to your letting agent about is make sure that regular property visits are being carried out to the property or properties within your portfolio. You or your agent need to check that you are complying with the repairing and the tolerable standards. So if it's been a while since you've been at your property or you don't know the last time your letting agent was there, then get in touch with them, have a look at your terms of business agreement to see what it states about how often that they're going to inspect the property on your behalf, and make sure that something is booked in. You've got authorised purposes for visits to a rental property that sits within the law. So with your private residential tenancy agreement, if you're going to visit a property to carry out an inspection, to do work, or to carry out a survey in accordance with the repairing standard, then those are the 3 authorised purposes for access to a property. So you can speak to your tenants or your agent to organise a visit, and if that is refused by the tenant and you just can't come to an agreement as to access, then you would have to go to the first tier tribunal to say that they're withholding access for an authorised purpose, and you want them to to give you that access, basically. So get a property visit booked in, see what you're dealing with. Start to take action now when you receive complaints about damp and mold. I'm quite sure that everybody here that's a landlord has had something throughout your time as being a landlord about damp and mold within a property. But what can you be doing? Arrange a visit to the property as quickly as you can. You can look at the affected areas if it's accessible. Can you clean those affected areas? Is it hot soapy water? Is it one of the mold and mildew remover sprays that you would need to use? What could you kind of do topically to try and clean the area? To see, will that have a positive effect on removing it? Or, is it only a kind of temporary measure? But what can you actually do to take action straight away? It's a good idea to keep written records of when you received complaints, the action that you took to arrange a visit, photographs of what you found, and any follow-up photographs from, any cleaning that you may have done, or you've got a contractor in to do that on your behalf, and any follow-up visits. We often find from colleagues in environmental health at the different local authorities that we work with that they need a kind of dossier of evidence to see what's happened so far within a property, and that action has been taken. So if you're not already doing that and you've got a property that's affected by damp and mold, then start to get your records in place now. Again, if you're working with the letting agent, have a look at the letting agent's policies and procedures per the letting agent code of practice to understand what it is that they're doing for you, and check your terms of business agreement or your contract so that you understand what your kind of role is within the management of the rental property, and what you can expect from them. It's a good idea to check the effectiveness of the heating in your property and any insulation that may be present there. Home Energy Scotland is a really good resource for landlords to use. They've got surveyors and specialists that they can send out to a property to meet you there to have a chat about what type of heating or insulation would be most effective in your property. They've got access to grants and funding for landlords as well. So it's a good idea if you're concerned maybe about heating or insulation within your property to have a chat with Home Energy Scotland and see how they could potentially support you. Make sure that the heating systems that you've got in your property are being regularly serviced on an annual basis. That if it's radiators, if it's a gas central heating system, that the radiators are bled on a regular basis. That the tenants have got a key to bleed radiators and they've got instructions on how to do it. And that tenants have got copies of safety check certificates and service paperwork. You might be saying, well, I'm doing that, Jacqueline, or why do we need to bleed radiators? Or why does the tenant need to know how to do that? They can just Google it. Why do I need to let them know? You want to make sure that the installations that you've got for your heating systems are working effectively, so that any issues that could occur with damp and mold, that you've got an effective heating system working at its optimum to heat the property. You want to check ventilation systems that you've got in your property, make sure that windows open properly. So when you go there to do your visit, check all the windows. If it's a traditional tenement property and it's sash and case windows, what's the situation? Can you open the window okay? Does it drop back down? Is there an issue with the weights, with the ropes? Are they intact? Are they broken? Does the top sash open as well as the bottom sash? If it's a more modern property, or it's something maybe 80s 90s with like metal windows, what's the condition with the handles? Can you open the window and can you get proper fresh air ventilation through? If you've got vents on the windows, do they actually open? Are they free from debris? It's amazing how much that they just choke up with dust and rubbish. So that's something that can be checked. And make sure that any extractor fans, mechanical extractor fans that you've got in kitchens and bathrooms, that that they're operational and that they're properly connected. It's so common to find that, you know, there's a fan in an internal bathroom, but it's not being connected up to a duct, and it's not venting externally. It's just all that hot, humid air is basically just, you know, floating around in the space above the ceiling of the bathroom and the floor below that can obviously start to cause issues. Similarly with kitchens, if you've just got a cooker hood with a carbon filter and you know the window doesn't work, or it's difficult to access it, you've not got a pole to help tenants open it if it's a sash and case window, or you've not got any other extraction, mechanical extraction in the kitchen, then, you know, when people are boiling potatoes or their pasta or whatever it is, that hot air has got nowhere to go. So it's really important that you check that your property has got, you know, adequate ventilation and that what is there is operating correctly. It's crucial to know your building's condition. It's all very well to, you know, to do what you can do with inside the four walls of your flat. But as Joe has demonstrated, you know, if there are issues with the fabric of your building, then you need to be on top of that and working with the other owners and the property factor, if you have one, to know the condition of the building. So you want to check the repair history, maybe speak to the factor or some of the other owners about it. It might be that there's something going on, you know, that you've just not made any headway with, and you need support from the council, from environmental health. You might want to, you know, think about issues that you've got within your property for drying of clothes, and, you know, particular this time of year, people are going to be drying clothes outside. The weather just doesn't allow for it. But if you do have a garden space in your tenement building, then check the title deeds and see who owns the garden and is the space usable. People, tenants, owners, they will use outdoor space, and they will hang clothes outside to dry if the space is usable and it's there. So have a look into that. Again, as Joe said about the importance of having a building survey carried out. If you've owned your property for 5 or more years and you can't remember the last time that the building was ever surveyed, it's a good time to speak to the owners and, you know, set the wheels in motion for that, to have a building survey carried out so you know exactly what the condition of the building is. And that is, I mean, that's important for every owner of a tenement that's here today, whether you're an owner occupier or a landlord, but particularly if you have got ongoing issues with damp and mold in your building and your property. You've tried kind of topical solutions, you've spoken to the tenants about, you know, their use of the property, and, you know, you've identified that it's something bigger than, you know, than how somebody lives in a property, that is connected to the fabric of the building, and you need to take action. A building survey will provide you with the you know, with a report, letting you know exactly what you need to do and the urgency of it. So just to reiterate, why is it important for you as an owner and a landlord to maintain and look after your building where you have your rental property, or you may own more than one property within the building? We want you to know what your responsibilities are as an owner. You haven't just bought your flat, you've bought a share of the common areas of the building, and you're responsible with the co-owners for the upkeep and maintenance of the building. We want you to be aware of the condition of the building. We want to reduce reactive repairs constantly happening and avoid unexpected and high bills. Nobody wants that. We want you to have adequate building insurance in place, and we want you to have regular communication with the other owners in the building, particularly if your property is experiencing issues with damp and mold, and you know that it's connected to the fabric of the building. You know, communication needs to start, and we need to kind of get that to the point of a positive conclusion, where we have got you know, repairs underway. So what are our top tips for tenement owners? We would always recommend that you know who the other owners are in the building. Whether you've got a factor or not, the factor is unlikely to share the contact details of other owners with you under the umbrella of data protection and GDPR. There are ways and means that you can find out who the other owners are within your building, and Rebecca will post links to our pages on contacting other owners and tracing owners, so that you can compile a list of the owner contact details and circulate that round all of the owners. It's a good idea to consider establishing an owners association for your building, whether you've got a property factor or not. As Joe stated, this is part of the Scottish Government's plans to make owners associations mandatory across Scotland. So it's a good idea to get ahead of that and consider setting one up for your building. Rebecca will post a link to our pages that we have on that, as well as the guide on how to set one up. It's a good idea when you're establishing contact details for owners to double check that people have got the right type of building insurance in place. It might be that you're here today as an owner and landlord and you've got a property factor and they arrange the insurance for you. But if your building is unfactored or your title deed state that there's no need to have a common or block policy, you can have individual policies, then it's worthwhile making sure that everybody has got adequate insurance. You know, the policy may not cover you for fabric repairs, but it will likely have coverage for resultant damage to the building and to the flats within the building. So you need to make sure that people have got insurance. It's also a good idea to make sure that your insurance valuation, reinstatement valuation, is at the correct level. Nobody wants to find that there's been a fire, flood, or other catastrophic incident and that you're underinsured. You want to make sure that everybody's got the correct insurance in place and at the right level. We've spoken about the importance of a professional building survey, but there are things that you can do as an owner and landlord yourself when you're going round to check the building, to check your property to see how you comply with the tolerable and repairing standards. Walk through the building, go up and down the stairs, have a look at the common areas, have a look at the main door, the downpipes, have a look up at the gutters. Have you got, is there a tree growing out of them? Is there, is the stonework wet? Is the downpipe looking rusted? What is the condition of the overall building and how could that be potentially contributing to damp and mold growth within the property? Make sure that your gutters are cleaned annually. Sometimes it's twice a year if you're in a particularly leafy area, that you're getting your roof checked on an annual basis, that you've got some kind of maintenance schedule and some kind of way to save for future repairs, and consider opening a joint maintenance account if you don't have a factor, particularly if you're planning on setting up an owners association. You need to get into the mindset of it's not just, oh, somebody's asking for 100 quid, or my share of this is like 2.5 grand, where am I going to get that from? Let's start to think about the long term and how we can start to save with the other owners, and we've got some kind of joint fund and contingency fund for when things go wrong, or we know from our building survey that we've only got another X amount of years left with the roof, or we need to do something with the gutters, whatever it may be, that there's a fund there to pay for that. If you're working with a factor, your building is factored, I guess it's worthwhile pointing out that the factor doesn't own the building, it's you as owners that own it. The factor can only act upon owner's instructions. Sometimes the lines can blur about what the owners are responsible for and what the factor is responsible for, but they don't have a big pot of money to carry out repairs and then bill everybody for afterwards. It's the owner's responsibility to maintain it, and the factor is there to help you do that. And they have got to abide by the Property Factors Code of Conduct that sits within the Property Factors Act. They all have a written statement of service agreement, which again, like if you're working with a letting agent, I would urge you to go and have a look at your factors written statement of services agreement, and the wider Property Factors Code of Conduct that Rebecca can post links to in the chat, so that you can understand what the factor's role is, what they're there to do, and how you can expect them to work on your behalf. But it's a good idea if you can, to build up that relationship with your factor, and make sure that they're coming to visit the building, and that there's regular meetings happening, and just get that communication going, so that your building can be in a good standard of repair. So how can we help you under one roof? We have got hundreds of informative articles on our website. If you're not already familiar with it and using it on a regular basis, I would urge you to go on and have a look at it today, and see how we can help you. We've got lots of architect drawings on there. We've got photographs, and we really kind of break down all the technical aspects of tenement building repairs on the website. So chances are, whatever the issue is, we've got an article on it. So go and have a look at that. We've also got an inquiry service, our Ask an Expert service. So when you go onto the main page of the website, you can click the Ask an Expert button. It'll bring up a form for you to complete, and it'll come through to me or my colleague Stephen. We'll have a look at it and we'll get back to you within a few days, with some kind of help and information to point you in the right direction as to how you can go forward in a positive manner. So I hope that you have found that useful today. I know that damp and mould are serious issues. It's the bane of a landlord's life, particularly at this time of year. And we want to make sure that you're equipped with as much information as we can give you, so that ahead of the implementation of AWAB's law, that you've got things under your belt and you can get started, so that when we do get the details through from the government, hopefully it will not be too much of a shock, and we can we can work through that. So I'll stop sharing my screen for now, and come back into the main area. Julie and Brian, I don't know if you want to join us for this portion. I just saw that Ricardo is here. Hi, Ricardo. We go way back. So I hope you're enjoying this presentation today. Right, Rebecca, I'll let you lead on the Q&A.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got tons of really good questions. Please feel free to follow up with Jacqueline afterwards if we don't get round to your question, because we do have sort of 15 minutes left. But I'll just start from the beginning. Our first question was from Ian. Is it legal for me to use my own drone to inspect the roof/gutter? The factor refuses to use a drone.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
When we do our inspection reports, we use a drone. It has to be, if it's a certain size and fairly small and not a commercial one, you can get away with flying it without any licenses in the city. From experience, people get really funny with drones and they feel that you're kind of looking into their flats and stuff, and it's an invasion of privacy. I think they're absolutely vital these days to be able to see. You can always get onto a tenement roof, but you might only be able to get onto the flat part of the roof, not the valleys. Health and safety is a wee bit more intense than it used to be in the old days. So I find a drone absolutely invaluable. It's all about the licensing and the size, but I can give you details of that if you send me an email. I can send you the details on.
Great, thank you.
Great. That's very helpful. Ian says it's small. Thank you.
Go for it.
Brilliant. We've got our second question is from Roy. I have tenants in a modern flat in Glasgow Harbour who do not ventilate the flat, causing damp. And this was something that came up a lot in the chat as well. What are my rights as a landlord?
Yeah, Roy, that's a difficult one. I used to manage flats in Glasgow Harbour. I know that they've all got, modern windows, they've got vents, you've got mechanical extraction in there. So there's everything there to kind of prevent damp and mold growth, I would have a look at your tenancy agreement and see what's there about the tenant's responsibilities. If you're working with a letting agent, how often are they visiting the property and what information are they giving to the tenants? Similarly, if you're self-managing the property, then I would be, when you do your regular inspections, whether that's quarterly or 6 monthly, make sure that you're taking photographs, that you've got evidence of emails or letters that you've sent to the tenant with photographs stating that this is how you found it, what you're not happy about, and what they can do to resolve the problems. But if it's an ongoing issue and you're not getting anywhere with the tenants, then it would be, I guess, a commercial decision for you to make as a landlord as to whether you wanted to continue on with the tenancy or whether you wanted to bring it to an end. Sometimes once tenants move out, and you can, do a bit of a clean-up operation, and you can get it ready for new tenants to move into, and it's time consuming, but it's not too much hard labor. But if it's allowed to build up over a long period of time, then it can start to get quite difficult and quite expensive. So that's something for you to consider as to whether you would like to continue on with that tenancy or not. But make sure that you're regularly visiting it, you've got a dossier of evidence, and that you are giving the tenants all of the information so that you can demonstrate where they're not complying with that.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Shona, who says, we've got a flat with a minor mold problem. Factors have attended several times and said it's condensation, which I would tend to agree. But the tenant refuses to believe this. We've sent them guidance on reducing condensation, etc. We previously had the walls cleaned and painted, but it keeps coming back. Another roofer recently said that the loft is dry and the gutters have been cleared, but the tenant says that the problem's not sorted. Don't know where to go from here.
Okay. I guess I would say in that one, Shona, if you can demonstrate to the tenant that you've done all that you can to have the fabric of the building checked, the internals checked, and you've got professional report stating that there's no issues, and you've given them all the information on condensation, then again, I think you'd need to be a wee bit brutal and decide whether you want to continue on with that tenancy or not. It's a difficult situation when tenants don't or they're not willing to accept that their use of the property is kind of, I guess, breaching into the negligence, and it is starting to cause problems that you can't necessarily eradicate.
I think as well,
yeah,
Jacqueline,
Joe, you know where I'm going with this.
Just to make sure that the fabric is okay. A roofer might say that the gutters are cleared and it's all right, but is there another problem? So as Jacqueline says, it's kind of to dot your I's and cross your T's, make sure it's not the fabric, identify it is their user within the building that's causing this. And then as Jacqueline says, maybe just get a bit tough like the one before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me scroll down. So our next question was from William. This is on compulsory owners associations. How will compulsory owners associations work with factors in place to handle repairs?
Yeah, well, the way things are sitting at the moment, with the announcements about mandatory owners associations, each association has to have a manager, so that's likely where you've got a property factor that they'll sit in that role, and they'll continue to do what they do on behalf of owners. So yeah, I think that's how that will work. Joe, any other thoughts?
I mean, it's I've seen a lot of the questions and stuff on the chat, which I know we're not going to get through all of it, but it's one of these things whereby you as a group of owners own your building and are responsible. not your factor. Your factor's not a building surveyor. Your factor's not an architect. Your factor basically is not the Lord when it comes to your building. You are
Yeah.
paying this factor to ultimately get you all together as a group and look after minor issues, really, in terms of maybe lighting in your stair, locks on your doors, carpets, whatever it is that you need them to do. But they are not professionals. And I think that factors get very frustrated when they are expected to be professionals. I've been on the tenement working group for about 8 years. We have been banging our head against the wall for about 10 to try and get all this sort. There are so many questions that still need to be answered. But as
Yeah.
Jacqueline says, under the law, if this does go ahead, which we believe it will, it is down to the owners to decide who that manager would be. Now, that could be Jimmy in your stair who really wants to do it. It doesn't have to be your factor. It is very difficult to get rid of a factor that isn't doing a very good job. So you have to make sure that you trust the person and they understand the responsibilities of what you're asking them to do, because it's a much bigger thing than them just being a factor.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Okay,
What have
thank
we
you.
got next?
Next question is from Robert, who asked, there's a very small area of dark spots near the roof on the wall of one bedroom in a flat I own and rent out. There is an ensuite bathroom, so it could be an internal or external cause. A factor looks after maintenance, so should I contact them in the first instance? Am I right in thinking that this is a communal rather than an individual problem?
Yeah.
So it's communal if it's your gutter or your
Yeah.
roof. It'll be individual if your tenant doesn't put the extractor fan on when they have a shower. So I think
Yeah.
it's back to this determining the actual. You can contact your factor and ask for the latest building inspection report that you have of the property, or what's the last maintenance that you've done, or just really simply stand outside your property when it's raining and see if anything's leaking. If you've
Yeah.
got gutters leaking or a downpipe that's choked, best time to do it is when it's absolutely pouring down.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, I think in the meantime, Robert, you could also, clean the area, if you can reach it, and speak to the tenant about ventilation. Make sure that whatever it is in the ensuite, the fans or whatever are working, the windows open, and see if that eradicates it. And if it doesn't, then go from there, and consider speaking to the factor if you can't attribute it to anything internally within the property.
We work with a lot of factors who come and ask for reports to be done in terms of just in general, because again, it's back to the thing where your factor can't be expected to decide the condition of your property. They're to arrange what's wrong with your property, to arrange the repair, if that's necessary, to get someone round, to get a roofer round.
Yeah.
So all of what Jacqueline said.
Yeah. Great, Rebecca.
Thank
Let's
you.
crack on.
Yeah, I think we've got time for a couple more. Question from Colin. Where can I find an independent expert to come and assess a problem of rising damp in a loft space? I need an expert who's not tied to a contractor.
Rising
Joe?
damp in a loft space. Those two don't make sense to me.
Sorry,
Yeah.
damp rising into a loft
Yeah.
space. I'm not
Or
sure.
damp in a loft space. So it sounds like you've got roof defective problems.
Yeah.
If
Sounds
there's
like
water
there's
ingress in the loft space. So you would contact you just get a professional, you get an architect or a building surveyor to go around and have a look. They would provide an independent report on what's wrong. You're right, if you call a contractor or a number of different contractors, you'll get a number of different ideas of what's wrong and a number of different costs of how much it will cost to repair.
Yeah.
Great. I did share a link in the chat about building surveys and where people might be able to find kind of independent surveyors.
Yeah, so the RIS has conservation accredited architects. They have a list of the conservation accredited architects that do reports and work on kind of tenement properties. Not all conservation architects do, so it's good to kind of go onto their website and have a little route around. That's my bread and butter. That is what I do. but also the RICS have got accredited building surveyors listed on their website as well. So equally, just make sure whoever's doing it knows what they're talking about, understands traditional properties, and has got a level of experience with it.
Yeah.
I will find those links and share those when I send out the email as well.
Rebecca, can I just say something? Because I know that we've only got a minute left, and I saw a couple of questions about insurance.
Yeah.
Under One Roof and myself and Howden Insurance are doing a webinar on the 25th of February at 12:30. So we're just in the process of sorting out the, well, Rebecca is just in the process actually of sorting out the invitations to that and the promotion of that webinar. I mean, insurance is dry. It's a dry subject, but it is very important. And I know it's quite confusing as well, especially in tenement property. So this is why we've put on a separate webinar to discuss that.
Absolutely. Keep an eye on our website for upcoming events. We'll get that up on the website soon.
Great.
Because there are quite a lot of questions
Yeah.
about insurance.
Yeah.
It
I
is
know
now
I
1
saw,
o'clock.
yeah, I saw that Siobhan had put something about how can we judge if we're underinsured. They've got a whole building policy through their factor. Factor said we need to confirm we're happy with the value, but no way of knowing what's appropriate. Normally, there would be a building surveyor can carry out an insurance reinstatement valuation survey, or the insurer will have access to some kind of linked index about the level of insurance. So there are ways that you can that you can check that.
And that'll all be covered in the webinar that we're doing, because it's quite tricky. It's quite complicated.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. I'm just wondering for the rest of the questions, I'm aware that we're just kind of over time and people are going to have to get back to work. Quite a few have dropped off already. It might be that I just go through the rest of these questions that we've not answered and just write a wee comment, and people will still have access to that, Rebecca, right? Afterwards? Yeah. Okay, great. So why don't I do that? If we've not managed to get to your question, or if we have answered it, but you've got follow-up questions, then please get in contact with me at jacqueline@underoneroof.scot. You'll get a copy of my email address and all the information that Rebecca sends out to you. And I'll come back to you and let you know. But I think, yeah, thank you so much to Julie and Brian from Glasgow City Council. Joe, thank you so much for being here today. Rebecca and I are really pleased that we've been able to put this webinar on today. I hope you've all found it helpful and useful, and we're happy to continue the conversation offline. So we'll let you go away and get on with the rest of your day, get your lunch, and we'll hopefully see you all again really soon. Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
everyone.